Local Justice, presented by Elrod Pope Law Firm, serving our community since 1980. Here's your host, Attorney Ben Leader.
Welcome back to Local Justice. I'm your host, Attorney Ben Leader with the Elrod Pope Law Firm, and today I'm honored to be joined by Attorney Creighton Hayes of the Hayes and Hayes Law Firm right here in Rock Hill. Creighton comes from one of York County's long-standing and most respected legal families. Like myself, he's a second-generation attorney who has also had the unique opportunity to work alongside and learn from his father, Wes Hayes, who built an outstanding reputation for serving the York County community for decades. But before Creighton joined his family firm, he built his own foundation in the courtroom. He clerked for a local circuit court judge, spent several years as an assistant public defender, where he represented more than 1,500 indigent clients, and today he practices in several different areas of law, including criminal law, family law, disability law, as well as civil litigation and injury law. Today we're going to talk about his journey, what he learned in the courtroom before joining the family practice, and some of the work that the Hayes and Hayes firm is still doing today. And hopefully he can answer a few legal questions that can help our viewers better understand the justice system. Creighton, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Ben, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, Creighton, I'd love to start out by letting the viewers learn a little bit more about you and kind of your background and what led you to law school before we talk a little bit more of the specifics of your practice. So tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up and went to school, and kind of what led you towards law school.
Well, I grew up in Rock Hill, went to Northwestern High School. You and I were a year apart, and after high school I went to Wofford College in Spartanburg and graduated in 2008, and then went to law school and finished in 11, and since 11 I've been back in York County in one form or another. I grew up in a legal family. My dad, uncle, cousin, my grandfather, a lot of lawyers in the family, and so always in the back of my mind it was something that was certainly a possibility, but I don't think that really materialized or really solidified until college probably.
Yeah, and Wofford's a great school, and I know they do a great job kind of preparing the curriculum for people to move on to law school. Was it, certain class there that kind of had that light bulb go off, that aha moment? That
I don't know if it was a particular class. I think I've always gravitated away from science and math and more towards history and English, which I think goes well with the legal side of things. So I was a history major, but took a lot of English and political science classes as well. But somewhere along the way, I decided to take the LSAT and did well enough to get into law school and went from there.
Well, I want to touch on your time at Wofford because your college experience was a little bit unique compared to most freshman years at college. You were actually diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma your freshman year. Tell us a little bit about that experience. You ultimately fought and beat that cancer and made a return back to school the following year. Tell us about that process.
Sure. My spring semester of my freshman year, I was diagnosed with lymphoma, had a cough for quite a while, and then ultimately went to the hospital and had a tumor that was protruding from my chest, and so lymphoma and leukemia are very similar, but lymphoma typically has a tumor, so that was the tumor, and but otherwise it's a blood cancer, and after it was biopsied, I started chemotherapy and radiation and was out of school for 2 semesters and went back my sophomore year, but continued to receive some oral medication for about 2 years after the diagnosis, and at about the 5-year mark, that's kind of the watermark you're looking to get to, and luckily I'm about the 21-year mark now, so
Wow.
I'm very blessed and thankful to still be here and to have beaten it. So
Yeah, that's an incredible journey and incredible fight on your part, and to be able to jump right back in and still graduate in 4 years is really impressive.
Well, thank you. I was lucky. I was able to take IB classes at Northwestern and got a lot of credit towards college and didn't have to do a 5th year, so that was good.
That's great. And then law school, was that at South Carolina?
That was at South Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your father, Wes Hayes, has had an incredible career, not only as an attorney, but also during his time serving with the South Carolina legislature as well, and many civic organizations throughout York County he's had his hands involved in over the years as well. Did you always envision kind of returning to work alongside him, or how did that process play out?
No, not necessarily. Again, I think that was, a possibility that I knew might be there. But after law school, I went and clerked for Judge Lee Alford, who's a circuit judge, and that was a great experience. He was formerly a probate judge, a family court judge, and then a circuit judge, and so he was a jurist for about 30 years before he retired, and learned a lot from him in that first year out of law school. And then I went to work in the same building out in York for the public defender's office after that, where I was for 3 years prior to going to join the practice with Dad.
And Judge Alford's a great guy and was a great judge. And when I worked for Judge Hayes, the law clerks essentially shared a conference room together where we set up our offices. And so even though I was technically clerking for Judge Hayes, I got to spend a lot of time with Judge Alford as well. I'm sure you had a similar experience.
Very similar. We had, I don't know, he's not here in town anymore, but at the same time that I was clerking for Judge Alford, Willis Leitner was clerking for Judge Hayes. And the coffee pot was in our office, and so everybody had to come in there and got to know all the bailiffs and the deputies and all the courthouse staff, and it was a great experience.
Oh yeah, clerkship was a phenomenal year for me as well. We've had a lot of guests on the show over the last year that have clerked and always seem to say that was one of the highlights of their career. So I know that was a special time with Judge Alford. And when I think of Judge Alford, I think of just the respect that he kind of commands in the courtroom, and as an attorney, always wanting to hold myself to his standard is kind of the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. He could be a tough judge, but I always, even after clerking for him, when taking clients, in front of him, I always thought he was very fair and would hear me out and tried to make the right decision in every case. So.
Absolutely. And so you finish your clerkship, you're out of law school, you're ready to hit the real world. Something drew you to actually go back to the public defender's office and start your career there versus jumping straight to private practice. What was it, kind of the courtroom experience and the possibility of getting a lot more of that drew you there?
Yeah, absolutely. It probably was similar for you, but I think that the criminal versus civil docket for a circuit judge in South Carolina is probably 80-20 or more, and so the vast majority of the stuff that came before Judge Alford on a weekly basis was criminal, and so I got to see the interplay between the solicitor's office and the public defender's office, because of the criminal docket, probably 90% is represented by the public defender's office, and so it really spoke to me more as a clerk than it ever did when I was in law school, the criminal law, criminal defense, and really became interested in getting into the courtroom, trying cases, and developing some litigation experience.
That's great. Well, I know you got a lot of that at your time with the PD's office, and so we're going to take a quick break from the station sponsors. When we return, we'll dive right back into your time with the Public Defender's Office and talk about some of that experience that kind of propelled you to this point in your career. So thank you for your time and for joining us, and thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another episode of Local Justice. We'll be right back with Attorney Creighton Hayes here shortly.
I was hurt. I was in need. They showed up.
In Tariq Alexander's case, somebody sideswiped him. At the end of the day, they failed to accept any responsibility for their actions.
They didn't want to take care of my bills, my accident, my truck. My attorney said, if you want to, we can fight. So I say, hey, let's go all the way with it. And I was very pleased with what the attorneys was able to do with me and for me. I look at Ben as he's not my attorney anymore. He's more of a friend. Even to this day, if something goes wrong, I'm going to be calling him.
Reliable Healthcare is a trusted home healthcare provider. They offer services to seniors and people with disabilities. Reliable Healthcare is a non-medical agency that helps with everything from personal care assistance, housekeeping, childcare, dementia, companionship, and end of life. Reliable Healthcare provides personalized care that enables clients to maintain independence and quality of life and the security of their own homes. Reliable Healthcare, where every individual deserves to be treated with the utmost respect and compassion. Visit them on the web or on Hurlong Avenue in Rock Hill.
Welcome back to Local Justice. I'm attorney Ben Leader with the Elrod Pope Law Firm, and today I'm honored to be joined as a guest by attorney Creighton Hayes with the Hayes & Hayes Law Firm right here in Rock Hill. Creighton, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Want to dive back into your time with the Public Defender's Office because I think that's such a great example of being a young attorney and being able to dive right into the courtroom and roll your sleeves up and get some experience you otherwise wouldn't have gotten. And I think during your roughly 3 years there, you were able to represent well over 1,000, probably over 1,500 indigent clients during that time. I'm sure a lot of that involved plea deals, but a lot of it also involved jury trials. And I actually remember you trying a case when I was clerking for Judge Hayes and got a not guilty verdict on it. And so tell us just, what is that hands-on experience like? And, has there been any substitute for that in your opinion?
I don't think there's any substitute for it. First of all, it's unless you can immediately get cases that need to go to trial in private practice, and I think there's no substitute for it because in the Public Defender's Office, when I started there, the attorneys at the top, Harry Dess, B.J. Barraclough, Phil Smith, Melissa Inzerillo, Mark McKinnon, they had such a good core at the top, which still exists today, that all of those were, any of those people I could turn to with questions about trying a case or certain issues, the statute, or whether I was way off base or on the mark, so going into the Public Defender's Office was huge for me. A lot of mentors. Mindy Lipinski, who's now the head PD in Greenville County, was also in our office when I was there. Just the amount of knowledge and experience there was huge for me. And then first we started off in magistrate court, municipal court, and from there, once you kind of got a little seasoned, the office would generally move you to general sessions, where you're handling felonies and other high-level misdemeanor charges, and with the prosecutor always on the other side of the case. And was fortunate to be able to try several cases over those 3 years in magistrate and in general sessions court, and occasionally to a not guilty verdict. But you're right, the vast majority of cases either result in dismissal or some type of plea bargain, plea arrangement.
And from a day-to-day basis, you're on your feet, you're in the courtroom, whether you're arguing plea deals or mitigation or actually trying the cases. You're in the thick of it each and every day there.
Absolutely, yeah. And the PD's office, the Public Defender's Office, is also a challenging office or position because the clients are indigent. Many of them are the nicest people we ever meet, and some of them are not, and they can be difficult. Or demanding, or don't understand the process, and so explaining that to them, getting them to understand the process and to make a knowing and informed decision on their case can be a challenge, but it could also be rewarding.
Oh yeah, just the client management experience you get, from representing people that may not necessarily have chosen you or wanted you to represent them, but to still have to provide them, their rights and make sure they get a fair shake at things.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we've had Harry and BJ both on the show in the past, and so I can't think of two better mentors that you could have kind of learned from and be able to see in action at a young age.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, there's a misconception in our society that just because you're given a public defender or appointed a public defender that you are getting deficient, representation. That couldn't be further from the truth, at least here in York County.
That's right.
That could be the case in some areas, but in York County, all of the attorneys in that office, for the most part, I think could practice in private practice and would have chosen to be in the Public Defender's Office because they're passionate about that line of work.
Absolutely. And as an injury lawyer, I have to deal with a lot of the ambulance chaser jokes, from time to time, and there's definitely some negative connotations that come from that. how would you respond when somebody would ask you the question of, how do you represent people that you know are guilty or things along those lines? I'm sure you've received those questions some over the years. How do you kind of believe in the system and the process that, allows you to answer that question and be able to lay your head down and feel good about the work that you were doing?
Well, that's a tough one. I think some people can't stomach it or can't deal with that in their mind as far as equating somebody getting their fair shake and then or they equate that with condoning what happened, and that's not the case. But I think everybody's entitled to a full defense, to a fair trial, and part of that is looking at the evidence, trying to determine how would a jury look at this evidence and what would they likely do, and then trying to advise the client on what I think they should do in their situation. And they might not always agree with the advice, but I'm always going to give the person what I believe is good advice, and typically that involves the possibility of a plea bargain, because the potential consequences of going to trial and being convicted and the sentence after that are sometimes worse than if you're able to work something out on the front end of a case.
Absolutely, and the public perception isn't always right, and there's times where historically in the public eye somebody was absolutely guilty, and then when the facts actually come out and they're given their due process rights of a fair trial, it comes out that they were not guilty. And so believing in the system, I think, is just a central component of being able to be a defense attorney. And I think BJ loves the quote of it's better for I think it's 100 guilty men to walk than one innocent person suffer and be convicted improperly. And
Yeah.
I think that's the fundamental basis for our system.
Yeah, absolutely. And our system is heavily weighted on the state side, and they have a tremendous amount of resources and support, and I think something about representing indigent clients and being the David in that fight versus Goliath appealed to me in the beginning of my practice, and I think that the process is flawed in some ways, but overall I think we have a good system of justice in this country.
Well, I can't think of a better foundation to kind of propel the legal career you've found now, and being in that David versus Goliath battle early on has certainly paid dividends now when you're still dealing with a lot of those same situations, just in different practice areas.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take another quick break from our sponsors. When we come back, I really want to dive into Hayes & Hayes Law Firm today and all the different areas of law that y'all practice. I know some of which you helped expand into, and let the viewers get to know your firm nowadays a little bit better.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you to Attorney Creighton Hayes for joining us today. We'll be right back with the final segment of Local Justice here shortly. Thank you.
We have not lost the core values of what started this business.
A lot of attorneys spent many decades working extremely hard to build the reputation we have.
It's been really exciting to see the evolution and see the growth.
Our role now is to take this firm to the next level and to become a law firm of the future while still honoring their legacies by doing really high quality legal work and taking great care of clients the same way we have been for the last 46 years.
Coke Zero is now Coke Zero Sugar, with great Coke taste. Some people were excited to hear the news, some were skeptical. So we're not going to have the star of the show you're watching come out and say, "You'll love it." No special jingle written by this week's hottest pop star. No famous internet celebs who happen to be holding the label just so. Okay, maybe just one little pour shot. The only thing that will make you believe Coke Zero Sugar has great Coke taste is trying it yourself. Ice cold Coke Zero Sugar. Try one today.
Welcome back to Local Justice. I'm Attorney Ben Leader, and today I'm joined by Attorney Creighton Hayes right here in York County. Creighton, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
We've talked a lot about your journey and your time at the Public Defender's Office and really the foundation that you laid there, with the hands-on courtroom experience and helping 1,500 plus indigent clients over the years there. Let's talk about your role in private practice now. You did join your father's firm, and y'all combined to form the Hayes and Hayes law firm right here on Oakland Avenue. I know your dad for years really carved out a great practice of Social Security disability and helping guide folks through that process, along with some other injury law cases as well. But you brought that courtroom experience and I believe some criminal and domestic into the scene. Tell us a little bit about the arrangement where y'all decided to kind of join forces and how the firm's expanded.
Sure. Well, yeah, in 2015 or in September of 2015, I left the public defender's office and joined Wes in his firm in Rock Hill. And at that time, he was doing almost all Social Security disability and personal injury, and then other, civil litigation or simple, wills, things of that nature. And when I joined, he wasn't doing any domestic family court work, no criminal defense, and so having had some criminal defense experience already, naturally brought that to the table. And then the domestic side was something that I was interested in, had taken some classes in law school, but hadn't had any experience. But it was something that pretty quickly on started coming through the door, and that I felt like I enjoyed the subject matter. Not always the client or the particular case, but generally the subject matter, and was able to learn the law and to feel comfortable in family court relatively quickly, and it's continued to develop and has become a niche area for me, for my practice.
That's great, and I imagine with his reputation and kind of years of working here in the community that he was already getting calls for all these different types of practice areas long before you kind of hung the shingle with him and started taking those in. So there was probably quite a bit of work that y'all can now say yes, we can help you with, and you can keep kind of in house versus him having to send it elsewhere.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly it. He said I can cover the disability and the personal injury for the most part that comes to us, and if you do criminal and domestic, then we'll have a kind of a well-rounded plaintiff's practice for a small town, which was sort of our goal.
And I know he's still doing a lot of Social Security, which a lot of the firms around here have kind of dried up that practice or no longer doing it, but he's still having those Social Security hearings and still routinely representing a lot of clients in that area. I think that's one of the kind of the most unknown areas of the law that impacts a lot more of society than most people probably realize. Tell us a little bit about just the SSDI process in a nutshell, and kind of when does y'all's firm get involved? When does it make sense for somebody to reach out to you? And I know that the denials happen very frequently, and is that kind of an expected part of the process now?
I think it is generally expected. From a high level, somebody appeals for, or somebody files a initial request for disability, and Social Security disability is a form of Social Security, but people start receiving it before they're able to draw normal disability because of the inability to work. And so it is, but typically you're right, people are oftentimes either due to age, being young, on the spectrum of people applying, or not having adequate medical records, or not submitting the proper paperwork. A lot of people are initially denied, and it's at that point that they want to, or that they should seek counsel, because it's at that point that you file an appeal, and then you have the contested hearing at which a Social Security Administration hearing officer will determine whether to approve the request or not. And so they have a vocational expert on the government's side of things, testifying to the person's ability to work or lack thereof. And it's at that point that you've submitted all your documentation regarding the medical issue that's led to the disability.
Well, I know there's still a huge need for someone in our community to be able to help guide people through that process. A lot more people are getting those denials early, and need to have somebody kind of in their corner from an early point in that process. So I'm glad he's still going strong on the Social Security side of things, and I know that's been a big part of his practice for many years.
Yeah, it has, and he is certainly a guru. He knows the Social Security law very well, and you're right, there's not a lot of people in this area that do that, but he is one of them, and they used to have the hearings all in person, and at his age, he's thankful that a lot of it has gone to virtual hearings, and so he's able to stay in the office with the client and have the hearing remotely now, which saves him from having to drive to North Charlotte.
That's right. I think that's what finally did it for my dad. He said, "I'm done driving to North Charlotte to go to these 1 or 2 hearings."
Right.
And I'm glad they're doing that remotely now. And I think it's such a blessing you've gotten to work alongside him and learn from him and really work together. And that's something unique about the practice of law that happens a lot more than we see in other industries. Just tell us kind of how special has it been to work with your dad, and I'm sure it brings with it a lot of joy, but also some challenges that the general public may not necessarily see that I've experienced as well.
Well, for me, thankfully, it's been more on the joy side than on the challenges. Just getting to be in the office with him every day is a blessing. The good thing for us too is that like I said, we don't do the same types of work all the time, and we don't work on the same files or have the same clients. I mean, they're all clients of the firm, but we're not managing the same client cases, and so there's not a whole lot of opportunity to step on each other's toes, which is
That's
nice.
right.
But being there and getting to talk to him and bounce things off of him, it's been a huge blessing, and just getting that quality time with him has been nice.
Oh yeah, the decades worth of insight and experience you get to soak in, and being able to spend that much time together in a phase of your life where normally people don't get a lot of time with their parents, I think is really special.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for anybody out there that finds themselves in need of divorce lawyer, criminal lawyer, Social Security lawyer, civil litigation, injury, whatever it may be, what's the best way they can get in touch with Wes and Creighton Hayes?
Absolutely. Well, they can call us at our office, or they can send us an email. We're online, hayesandhayesllc.com. Our phone number is 803-324-2800. Be glad to speak with anybody about their case, but very easy to get a hold of. It's a small firm, just Wes, myself, Susan and Leela are 2 legal assistants, paralegals, and so small operation. I think we're easy to get a hold of. Be glad to help.
That sounds good. Well, appreciate your time on the show and joining us and sharing some insights with us. Really enjoyed hearing about your journey, from growing up in one of Rock Hill's most respected legal families to really building your own foundation through the public defender's office, your clerkship, and establishing that early courtroom experience, and now to being able to continue the tradition and the legacy at Hayes and Hayes. And I know y'all are super involved in the community. You continue to be involved in the community. We're actually on the hospice board together, and love seeing the second generation of another local firm carry on that tradition. So thank you for educating our viewers and for sharing some time with us. And to the viewers out there, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Local Justice with Attorney Creighton Hayes. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there. Thank you.
We're a part of the community, and that really is our backbone. These communities have supported our firm for 46 years.
All the attorneys at our firm really care about each one of our clients, and it's because they're from our community.
The team does a great job of reaching out to them and making sure that they feel embraced, they feel cared for.
All the success we've had is because of just a core fundamental belief in treating our clients the way we would want our family treated if we were in similar circumstances.
From my first watch I purchased as a teenager, which still runs today, to the diamond ring I surprised my wife with, which she still talks about today. A gift from Norman Hagee is as good as it gets. Whether it's elegant timepieces by Bulova, Caravel, and Bel Air, or ornamental ironwork-inspired Southern Gates collection, or dazzling fine jewelry. A gift from Hagee is backed by over 60 years of family-owned and operated experience. Norman Hagee Jewelers, for gifts as good as it gets.